Hello Grand Archive players, let's answer a rules question. When do you have to obey element restrictions, and when can you bypass them? You probably already know that the cards you play are limited by their element, and have to pass a check against the elements you are allowed to play. Your enabled elements are determined by the elements of your champion lineage, which is in turn determined by the elements of all the champion cards in that lineage, with a few exceptions. Norm element is enabled for all players by default, and the exalted element is enabled by having another advanced element enabled. So, for example, this lineage contains a Wind champion, some Norm champions, and a Crux champion, making this lineage Wind, Norm, and Crux. This lineage would also have Exalted enabled. Although there is an Umbra card in this lineage, it's not a champion card and doesn't contribute to the lineage's element, nor does it enable Umbra. Keep in mind that removing a champion card from a lineage, perhaps due to deleveling or lineage release, may cause that element to be no longer enabled. So now let's return to our original question. When do you have to obey element restrictions? The situations where enabled elements are checked are the following. Playing a card, that is, materialization or card activation, with the exception of champion cards, since they often enable their own element. And that's it. Playing a card is the only time when your enabled elements are checked. There are some effects that are restricted by element bonus, but this is slightly different, since it checks the elements of your champion rather than the elements you have enabled. We'll talk about this minor point a bit later. Let's look at some examples of card effects that check your enabled elements. Look for any effects that ask you to activate or play a card, such as Quicksilver Grail's second ability, Naya, Diviner of Fortunes, Bertha, Spry Howitzer, Ashen Riffle, Coronal Rejuvenation, Shattering Discharge, Ciel, Omenbringer's Lineage Release, and Grim Pastiche. The key words to look for are play, materialize, or activate. There are also alternative activation methods, such as Star Calling, Ephemerate, and Diaoqian, Enchantress's Glimmer ability, that allow you to play cards in different ways. However, these are still card activations, and you must still meet the elemental requirements of any cards activated in these ways. Some effects allow you to play cards but explicitly tell you that you may do so while ignoring their elemental requirements, such as Seiryuu, Azure Dragon generating an Arcane Blast, Harness Lightning, Tristan, Shadow Reaver, Spirit of Slime, or the Looking Glass. Some effects require element bonus. Naturally, you'll need to meet this element bonus in order to use these effects. For example, discarding Bloom, Summer's Glow may only be done while your champion is Terra element. Earlier I mentioned that element bonus is subtly different from having an element enabled. I'll demonstrate this slightly convoluted concept with a slightly convoluted example. Let's look at this player with this Diana lineage, a Seaside Rangefinder in the graveyard, and a Nullifying Lantern on the field. Can they activate Seaside Rangefinder's ability? The answer is yes, they can. Seaside Rangefinder is a Norm card in the graveyard due to Nullifying Lantern, so this Fire Norm champion lineage meets the conditions for element bonus. Now take the same scenario with this Polcock lineage. Can this player activate Rangefinder's ability? This time the answer is no. Although Polcock has Norm enabled and can play Norm cards, this lineage is not Norm, and so does not fulfill the Norm element bonus requirement. For a similar reason, a card like Luxem Sight, revealed from a memory affected by Nullifying Mirror, looks for a Norm element lineage for its reveal effect. Let's circle back and talk about effects that bypass element restrictions. As I mentioned before, that includes basically anything that isn't playing a card. If you somehow got an object onto the field under your control, you may make complete use of it even if you don't meet its element requirements, assuming you meet any other requirements such as class bonuses. This includes all abilities of objects under your control, static, triggered, or activated, as well as attacks and retaliations. Wouldn't it be weird if your basic element objects stopped working for you after you release Serene Spirit? You may also use floating memory of any element to pay memory costs or for other usages, again, assuming that you meet any other requirements. Moving cards to and from any zone does not have any elemental restrictions. Examples include Hymn of Gaia's Grace or Illuminating Charge, putting ally cards from hand onto the field, Gojia, Chosen Disciple, putting a Fate Stone from material deck onto the field, Quicksilver Grail's first ability, banishing a card from the material deck, Mistbound Selkie, putting itself from graveyard to the field, Spirit Blade Ascension or Spirit Blade and Soul, moving Sword Regalia around the material deck, banishment, and field, Beguiling Coup, moving an attack card from banishment to intent, loading Aether Charges into Aether Wings with effects that let you do that. Note that Aether Calling is distinct from Star Calling in that it is not a card activation. And effects like Incinerated Templar, which puts Spectre allies directly into play. Again, note that this does not involve activating that ally, unlike Ephemerate. Even though some of these effects resemble the act of playing a card, they do not actually count as playing a card. To summarize, the game checks enabled elements when a player plays a card, that is, materializes or activates a card in any manner. Any effects that do so will be subject to elemental restrictions based on that player's champion lineage. In terms of element restrictions, everything else is allowed. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.